The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Here we go. We're off and rolling, and a ton to get to today as Paul Feinbaum is bully on the Vols. Also, the draft just right around the corner. The Vol not named Darnell Wright that will have the best NFL career. And I'm befuddled. Good morning, Caleb Calhoun. How are you, sir?
Pretty good. Happy Tuesday, Dave.
Happy Tuesday. I'm befuddled a little bit because when I was shortly after our 5 a.m. production meeting, I saw a tweet by, I think it was Pro Football Focus, that talks about Hendon Hooker will be the oldest player ever, second oldest player taken in the NFL draft. And I'm befuddled and confused why that's a storyline. We all know COVID happened. Players are going to be older. Do you think that's a serious storyline?
No. And okay, so Chris Winkie was older than Hendon Hooker, I'm pretty sure, when he was drafted. Wasn't he drafted or was he undrafted? Chris Winkie.
Who was? I'm sorry?
Chris Winkie. Wasn't he older than Hendon Hooker?
No, I don't think so. I think Hendon Hooker is going to be the second oldest because of COVID.
No, Chris Winkie was older. Chris Winkie was born in 1972. He was drafted in 2001. He was 29 when he was drafted.
Okay, so but my point being, isn't that a positive for a quarterback? I'm a little bit confused as to why that's even viewed as a negative. Welcome to the program. Good morning, everyone, and be a nice day to be kin to Jalen Hurts because he just got paid. But it brings us back to Hooker. Why is the age thing viewed as a negative? To me, that's a huge positive, especially with guys playing into their 40s. I don't understand why this is a negative at all.
Yeah. Oh, I'm seeing the tweet. So it's, heads up what it is. It's the second oldest player drafted in the first round.
First round. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. So because there was Brandon Whedon too. Yeah. If it were 28, 29, 30, we could be having a different conversation, because then you're talking, okay, you might be like, how many years do you have, particularly if you're a project? Hooker's 24, right?
Yeah. I thought he was, he'd be 24, right?
Yeah, I think he's 24. Okay, he's a project. You need a couple of years with him, and he starts at 26, 27. And if he's ready to go and be a starter at 27, that's a good 10 years you can get out of a quarterback.
It's 25 as of January, for the record.
Okay, 25 as of January. So it'll be 25 this season. So say he's a 2-year project, hypothetically, because I think you and I both agree Hendon Hooker is at least a 1-year project, right?
Yes.
Okay, so this is where age is a factor. Age is a factor if you're a project. You have to be hesitant about somebody who's a little bit older because it limits the number of years you have. But with Hendon Hooker, 25 is not bad. Okay, 25, 26, maybe 27. He sits behind somebody. 3 years is usually the max when a quarterback sits behind before they're ready to go. So at the latest, if he's a starting quarterback, it'll be 28. That's plenty of years you can get out of him. 28 to 35, 36-ish. I would take a 9-10 year period for having a quarterback. I mean, does anybody realize like most teams run through 7 quarterbacks in 10 years?
Yeah, I don't really understand it all, but it's viewed as a negative. So let's get to it right now. A lot on the program. We mentioned we're going to discuss Paul Feinbaum's thoughts on the Vols. If you haven't gone to offthehooksports.com yet this morning, be sure and do that. Jimmy Himes has a great piece on his thoughts on spring practice. So we've got a lot of stuff up there, recruiting news as well. So a lot to get to. And Tennessee is number 12 in the ESPN preseason FPI. Let's get to that right now. Too high, too low. Today's tough question brought to you by Craven Wings.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Okay, initial impressions before we break down the list. Caleb, Tennessee at number 12 in the FPI. Your thoughts? Too high, too low, just right. It's our today's tough question brought to you by Craven Wings. Craven Wings with 3 locations around Knoxville. Jake Warren has the sauce, 87, which is phenomenal. and the food is always fresh, never frozen. It's unbelievable. Too high, too low, just right. Tennessee number 12. Please hit that like button and the subscribe button if you haven't to this point. Be sure and hit that like button, though, so we can bring some more people in. Too high, too low, just right, Caleb.
I think it's absolutely too low. I think it's too low because of the teams that are ahead of them mostly. Look, I'm not here to knock the FBI. It's not like they're biased. They have a formula that they do for these rankings. And typically in the past, they have been relatively accurate. They badly missed on Tennessee last year, though. They gave Tennessee a 30-something% chance to beat Pittsburgh, and then a 30-something% chance to beat LSU, and an 11% chance to beat Alabama. So the teams that are ahead of them this year, directly ahead of them is Oklahoma at number 11.
Let me stop you for 1 second, because Travis asked, what is the FPI for those in the dark? It has been around a while. It's starting to gain traction, but goodness gracious, it's kind of like they push it down our throats. But just explain it if you can for those that don't know.
So it's a predictive rating system that ESPN actually developed, and ESPN actually does a pretty good job with these analytical breakdowns. There's SP+, there's FBI. They use different formulas. On-field performance, level of rest, that's how they do a lot of their predictions and their projections for the year, and home field advantage and things like that. In preseason, they base these rankings off who has the best chance for certain. Well, that's how they do the predictive ranking, the predictive outcomes of games throughout the year. But
so basically, it's a formula that predicts every single game and then where you would finish, correct?
Your likelihood of winning every single game.
Okay. So
yes.
I'm gonna say right now that I'm gonna disagree with you if you think that's too low. And I want to go back to what you said last year. Pitt was a very underrated team. That was a tough matchup for Tennessee. If you would have told me that Tennessee had a 30% chance of winning at Pitt, I would have probably said that sounds about right. If you would have said this before the season, okay? If you would have said 30% chance of winning at LSU, I would have said that sounds about right. 12 to me, I see this as the opposite, and I'm a little bit surprised that we're on the other side of the fence. I see this as a sign of respect. Losing your quarterback, losing two of your top receivers, your defense still isn't proven and might not be even this year. I thought 12 was pretty respectful, not you?
No, because again,
No.
It's partially about who you lose, but it's also about what teams did last year. Oklahoma is not ahead of Tennessee. I don't know what formula they use for Oklahoma, except maybe schedule strength to predict them to be ahead of Tennessee this year. And by the way, the FPI rankings, the rankings aren't based on where you're going to finish, because there are teams below Tennessee that are projected to have more wins than Tennessee, and teams nobody's above them that's projected to have fewer wins. But still, it's
what are we predicting here? Is this just a rankings, like
they're using this formula for ranking, like actual ranking of the quality of the team right now, not predicted final finish. There's a power index, and then they use that to make their predictions along with home field advantage, resume, and things like that. It's based on returning talent, on-field production, coaching stability, recruiting, and transfer portal, and all of that goes into play. And I didn't
realize they use that much subjective knowledge. That to me is that gets a little sketchy. I'd rather you go back to the old BCS formula where it was all numbers and we could essentially compute it ourselves. They started including transfers and all that stuff. That's a little shady.
Well, you now have to include transfers because the transfer portal is basically another round of recruiting at this point. I mean, in many ways, it could outweigh recruiting, because when you sign a recruiting class, even if it's the number one class in the country, 3/4 of that class you don't expect to see the field their first year.
Well, but not to get sidetracked, but is a 5-star transfer in their rankings as big as a 5-star freshman, or is it bigger because it's a transfer? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how they factor that. Do you?
I don't, and I'm not exactly sure how they weigh it, but we have to acknowledge that a 5-star transfer probably should be higher, because you take a 5-star transfer that's a sophomore or a junior, you expect them to start immediately. You take a 5-star freshman. Do you not?
You do, but there's still going to be the malcontents out there. What we've talked about with this transfer portal has been surprisingly refreshing to me. It's a lot of guys looking for more playing time that could already play. It's not just malcontents. But let me pick a guy like Justin Williams-Thomas. Didn't we all think that last year he could be the freshman impact player because he looked like Tarzan and he ran like Jane? and he couldn't find a hole for any amount of money. He just had terrible vision. I don't care what he looked like, what he was like physically. He wasn't a college football player. But that's a guy that if he was a high 4-star. So if he goes to, where did he end up? Stanford or Cal? He went to one and then went to the other. But wherever he ended up, that shouldn't be considered as big of a boost as a 4-star high school prospect, right?
Well, they don't. Well, now 247 Sports is actually doing their own transfer ratings, not based on what you were coming out of high school.
Okay, but we're talking about ESPN's, right?
Yes, ESPN's. So this is the thing. We're getting in too much into the weeds because we don't know exactly how they apply.
We're way in the weeds.
But the real point of this, the overarching point, is that there is no way Oklahoma is ahead of Tennessee.
Right.
No.
Okay, so let me do this. This is what we originally planned to do. I'm going to read off the 11 teams that are ahead of Tennessee in the ranking. And you're our gambling guy. You have a great insight into gambling. So you tell me, if this was a neutral site game, would Tennessee be favored or the underdog? So I'll keep track, and I'm going to lean on you. I'm going to tell you when I agree or disagree. Ohio State's number 1 with a 31.5 rating. I have no idea what that means, but Tennessee would be an underdog against Ohio State at a neutral site, correct?
Absolutely, they would. They would absolutely be an underdog.
Okay, Alabama's number 2.
They would be an underdog, but I'm going to say it. I don't think they should be this year.
Okay.
My hot take of the year. I think Alabama is massively overrated.
I think Alabama's taking a step back, actually. So we're pretty close. Georgia, number 3.
Georgia would be favored on a neutral site.
LSU, number 4.
Would be favored on a neutral site.
Oh, wow. Okay. We're getting close to 13. All right. Texas, number 5.
What? Texas, number 5? No. Tennessee would be favored on a neutral site.
I agree. If the two teams meet in New Orleans, it's going to be Tennessee is going to be favored. Michigan, number 6.
Michigan would be favored on a neutral site.
Yes. Southern California, number 7.
See, now this one is actually tricky because you have the exact same offenses going head-to-head on a neutral site. I think Vegas would put more money on Caleb Williams, USC.
Yeah,
USC.
I would take the quarterback as the difference. Clemson, number 8. Well, we just saw what happened there.
Yes. I think Tennessee would once again be favored on a neutral site. Clemson, you want to talk about a program that there's a changing of the guard? They're falling back.
Yes. Notre Dame, number 9.
Tennessee.
There's no way that Tennessee wouldn't be favored above them on a neutral site. If they played in Louisville, Kentucky. Penn State, number 10, and then Oklahoma at number 11, right above Tennessee, who is number 12. So out of those, we had 1, 2, 3.
Wait, what about Penn State? Do you think Penn State would be favored?
I don't.
So Tennessee would be favored over Penn State too, yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to go by favored, if you want to go by Vegas, I would have Tennessee as I'd have Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, USC is favored. Based off that scenario, those stipulations, which are very different, I would have Tennessee at number 6 or 7, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I'd have them at number 7. I do think they'd be an underdog to LSU on a neutral site this year with Jaden Daniels back.
Good stuff. So 6 or 7, and instead they're at 12. But if I would have told you this time last year that Tennessee was going to be at 12, don't forget to hit that like button. The thumbs up button greatly helps us. But if I were to tell you last year that Tennessee's 12 after losing a quarterback, its 2 top receivers, Jeremy Banks, who at the time we thought was great, I just think this is another sign of Tennessee either earning respect through a formula, whatever it is, or getting respect through those that put together a formula.
Well, more mathematically, delving deeper, Tennessee's projected win total is roughly 8-4 by the FPI. I'm telling you, if they go 8-4, that's a disappointment this year, given their schedule.
With their schedule, that would be an embarrassment.
I'm sorry?
With their schedule, that would be an embarrassment.
Huge embarrassment. Now, again, they take into account buys and things like that. And I've been saying, Josh Ward was the first to say this to us. And ever since he said it, I've been circling this game because I think Kentucky is a very scary trap game for Tennessee this year. Probably the scariest trap game for Tennessee.
I agree. I agree. Josh also, by the way, is set to scheduled to join us on Thursday, and we will have Jimmy Himes who will join us tomorrow. So you can check out Jimmy's thoughts on spring practice. Go to offthehooksports.com, and we're with you each and every weekday at 10 a.m. right here. Check us out on YouTube and wherever you happen to podcast. We've got apps and all that good stuff now. So we'd have them at 6 or 7, and that's the same place that Tennessee was last year. That's knocking on the door of the playoff. That's if you're knocking on the door to playoff, not to go Rick Barnes stop, but if you're knocking on the door of a championship at some point, you usually knock that door down, right?
Yes, and there's also I hate to say this. Oh my God, I'm going to be such a head coach, Dave, and you're going to hate me for saying it, but there's a culture of winning that sometimes develops that I think makes you, I guess, expect to win more. It becomes more of a habit as opposed to expecting to lose.
I agree.
And because I'm going to be honest, gun to my head last year, do I honestly think Tennessee was one of the top 6 teams in college football last year? I'm not so sure. I think what happened was Tennessee cashed in on a favorable first 5 games of their schedule, where their toughest opponent was Pittsburgh in those 5 games. But they beat 3 Power 5 teams. They beat Pittsburgh on the road, who had just lost their quarterback and was breaking in a new one. They beat a first-year head coach in Billy Napier, and they beat a first-year head coach in Brian Kelly at playing LSU at noon on the road, which was 11 LSU time. And as we talked about, at playing LSU at noon, they're terrible at home at noon.
I thought most everything broke Tennessee's way almost as significantly as the 1998 season.
Yes. And so they start 5-0, and on paper they're 5-0, even though they got a lot of breaks to get to 5-0, including the way the schedule laid out. I think but just getting to 5-0 builds your confidence to a certain degree. And then Alabama's coming to town and you're ready to roll at that point. I would say, and again, I defend the 98 team so hard. I'm not so sure things broke their way in 98. I think they overcame things in 98. Who wants to play Syracuse and Florida as your first 2 games that year when you're breaking in a new quarterback? That's the worst draw possible.
No, but and trust me, let's have this conversation with Fred's not on, because I'll make Fred mad. Fred White joins us every Friday, but Florida did have, I think, 3 turnovers inside the 5-yard line. Syracuse had a correct, but pass interference call that is often not called. We could go on to the Arkansas fumble. We could talk about Florida State's playing their 3rd-string quarterback. So we could certainly debate that at another time. But I thought a lot broke Tennessee's way. Really, the only thing that didn't break Tennessee's way last season, because they got beat by a better team in Georgia. But the only thing that didn't break Tennessee's way last season was whatever happened in the locker room with Jeremy Banks. Other than that, you were talking about Bryce Young being injured before the Tennessee game. You were talking about the fact that Alabama missed a field goal that would have won it. I mean, we could go on and on and
pass
on.
Interference call, remember, on the interception?
Pass interference call. I mean, we could go on and on and on about how things, I thought, broke Tennessee's way in 2022, which things break both ways. There's nothing right or wrong with that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. Last year, things more broke their way because there were things. Again, the biggest thing that broke their way was how their schedule started out. Their first 3 Power 5 opponents were all opponents kind of going through transition years, but on paper they beat 3 Power 5 foes to get to 5-0. One of them in the top, 2 of them in the top 25 at the time. So I think sometimes success and momentum builds on itself, and you've seen this. I mean, let's call it what it is. You cover that 05 team. By the middle of the season, they were so mentally drained from those awful losses that they just almost quit on the season. And it was a snowball effect.
No, they were over it. It's time for 4 Downs, talking some quarterbacks. Where does Tennessee rank among the top quarterbacks in the SEC? 4 Downs brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn.
4 Downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
Downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Going into this, where would you have thought Tennessee's quarterback situation ranked in the SEC? Without looking, which I know you've looked.
Yeah, I would have said middle of the pack. I would have said like in the 6 to 8 range, probably.
Okay. Here we go. 4 downs brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Hey, look at me. No contacts, no glasses. That's because I got LASIK. You can get LASIK for Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn, and know that they are local doctors who care about you. I love it. Got a checkup this week, and I'm good to go. And it's fantastic. They also do cataract surgery, and they have local vision repair, local vision assistance and care that is absolutely top of the Knoxville market or elsewhere. And don't forget, some other places are flying doctors in to perform the surgery, so you don't really get to know them. All right, so 4 downs. The worst quarterback situation in the SEC is...
This is easy. It's easy, and Brad Crawford of 247 Sports said it, but I would have said it whether or not he said it. It's Florida. They're a disaster right now. They're in serious trouble.
Well, they're dead last on this ranking. And I agree with you. I think they thought Anthony Richardson would come back. Graham Mertz is the guy. It's hard to say that what I would consider somewhat of a blue blood, at least good since the early 90s, in Florida or a Tennessee or an Alabama or really any of the top half traditional schools in the SEC would have the worst quarterback in the SEC. But I think that's exactly what we're staring at right now. So who has the best quarterback situation in the SEC before we get to this list?
I'm going to say, and you're going to say I love them. You're just going to accuse me of being a fan, but I'm going to say it's LSU. It's LSU easily. I'm not a huge fan of Jaden Daniels, but I think another year in Brian Kelly's offense I think he can do whatever Golson did at Notre Dame.
I think it's very close between LSU and Arkansas. I will take KJ Jefferson just barely, but no, I don't disagree with you strongly on that at all. So best quarterback situation, you go with LSU, I go with Arkansas. Bama's quarterback situation currently will cost it blank number of games.
Ooh, this is where things get fun. Okay. They get a lot of fun. So I'm not going to say Texas because Texas has its own terrible quarterback situation. So I think Alabama beats Texas by default, but I think it costs them against. I'm going to say it costs them against LSU. I'm going to say it costs them against Tennessee. 2 home games.
All right. So he's picking Tennessee over Alabama already in April. I will say I don't know the games, but I think it costs Alabama 2 games because I thought last year that was a 9, maybe a 10-win sort of team that overachieved because of their quarterback. So it would be hypocritical for me to say that Bryce Young brought that much to the team, and now that he's gone, they don't lose that much. So I'll say 2 games, but I'm not going to specify who it is. Question.
Oh, wait, here's one. Let's go here. I'm going here. Hot take has already said they're scary for Tennessee. Kentucky. They play Kentucky on the road right after Tennessee and LSU.
Fair. 4th down, same question for Georgia. Georgia's quarterback situation will cost it blank number of games. Let's hear from you on the message board with Bama and Georgia as well. KJ Jefferson is a glorified fullback. There's a lot of truth to that. All right. So what do you got on this one?
I think Georgia's QB situation could cost it 1 game. The break for Georgia and Alabama that we're not seeing this year, and I will say this is the one thing in Alabama's favor, is their tough games are at home this year. Georgia really doesn't have any tough games, okay? Outside of Tennessee, Tennessee's the only tough team they play all year. They play Auburn on the road, but I think Auburn they weren't happy about their QB play in their spring game, so I think Hugh Freeze is going to have at least 1 down year before things get going.
New listeners, hit that like button, the thumbs up button. The answer is 0. Georgia is so good at this point, they could have Greg McElroy run out there, and I choose him for a very specific reason. He was an average quarterback at Alabama. They had an average quarterback at times with Stetson Bennett, who I thought really elevated his game last year, but they still won with an average quarterback. They'll still win this year. So they might lose a game, but I don't think it's going to be because of the quarterback situation.
At least Greg McElroy knew he was average and respected his position. Unlike his successor, A.J. McCarron, who thought he was the superstar of superstars. And I'm sorry, I have nothing nice to say about
it. You have issues with A.J. McCarron like Brent Musburger has issues with his girlfriend. No, I think that's fair. A.J. McCarron kind of accepted that role as caretaker and tried to elevate it to being a superstar. The simple fact is you're not necessarily a superstar just because you're the quarterback at Alabama. You might be a caretaker, and chances are until the last until Jalen Hurts, you have been a caretaker, right?
I think it.
It's Jalen Hurts, then it goes to
yeah,
Tua.
I would say Jalen Hurts. You're right, and quite honestly, well, Mac Jones was a caretaker to a degree. Let's be honest. Most of Alabama wins not. Think about this. This is actually a great point you brought up. Nick Saban's best quarterbacks have not won national championships. Bryce Young didn't win one. Jalen Hurts technically didn't win one because he was pulled during the national title game. Tua Tagovailoa didn't start the whole season and win it. He came in the second half. None of the non-caretaker quarterbacks have started a full season and won a national title for Alabama.
It's interesting. Small column there, perhaps. Tennessee's quarterback situation, for the record, where did it ranked among the SEC? Tennessee's quarterback situation you predicted was middle of the pack, and here's where they actually stand. My goodness, if I can pull it up, having some of the fun computer issues. So where is Tennessee's? Oh, number 4, Joe Milton at Tennessee. And this is the mistake that I think these lists make, is they just point out one guy. It's Joe Milton and Nico. Okay. So if you want to say that Carson Beck at Georgia and Jaden Daniels at LSU and KJ Jefferson are more established and better than Tennessee, yes, I would take that. But I would believe that and I'd buy that. But would I take Joe Milton and Nico over Carson Beck? Yeah, I would. Would I take them over Jaden Daniels, KJ Jefferson? Yeah, I would. The upside potential, I would take them over these teams that are listed ahead of them in Tennessee in at 4th, which is not too shabby.
Dave, it's so funny you say that because me and my brother were having a conversation over the weekend. Bleacher Report had a really stupid post. It was the dumbest post ever. And it was, you're starting an NFL team in your prime. Who are you taking? And it had Peyton Manning, Ray Lewis, Lawrence Taylor, and Megatron. You take Peyton Manning because you take the top 15 quarterbacks before you ever take another player if you're starting an NFL franchise.
Maybe top 50.
Yeah, maybe top 50. My brother and I actually had a point. It's like, not only would I take a quarterback first, I might take a top 50 quarterback second before I take anybody else. I might rather have 2 top 50 quarterbacks before I have anybody else at any other position in football at that point.
Now, and I know we're going to talk about this at the draft, but in your history of covering Tennessee football, what's the non-quarterback that you would take as the highest pick if we were holding a Vols draft? I think this is too easy.
This is it's Reggie White, isn't it?
I was going to say Al Wilson from a leadership standpoint.
Oh, leader. True. If you can't project, Al Wilson would have been a Hall of Famer if not for that neck injury, because he was a multi-time Pro Bowler and just had his career cut short. But yeah, if you can't project a neck injury, then yeah, it's Al Wilson easily. We forget how good he was when he played in Denver, by the way.
Oh yeah, he was very good. Hit that thumbs up button. We appreciate that. Portions of the program brought to you by Craft Treats. Go to crafttreats.com. Use the promo code Off the Hook. That's the promo code Off the Hook and get 20% off any of their fantastic treats. That includes the chill pills with CBD in there. So they'll help with your pet's digestive issues. They'll also help with your pet's arthritis issues. How about social anxiety? Got a lot of that out there with pets. So they'll help with car ride anxiety and the whole 9 yards. So you need to go to crafttreats.com. Use the promo code Off the Hook. The promo code Off the Hook. And you can take care of your pet with some great holistic medication. It is absolutely awesome. They've got other treats as well. So coming up, can Tennessee actually win the SEC East? We'll have that discussion. Also, take part in today's Tough Question brought to you by Craven Wings. All you have to do is go to our Twitter page at The Dave Hooker or OTH Sports Media, and you can vote right there. For the record, right now, we have about 57% coming in that is just right. That's where they would have Tennessee. They'd have Tennessee at number 12. 7% say too low. 35% say too high. I'll ask Caleb and the message board if that's a little bit surprising after this. 2 minutes. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.
I know you like the heat. You gotta try my signature sauce 87.
Dude, you know I love you and I love to try your wing sauce, but when it comes to wings, I need them really hot. I hit 105 on the radar gun. I need to be pretty spicy.
Yeah, I know that, man. Look, if sauce 87 isn't enough for you, I guess you can try the Holy Moses or the Grim Reaper.
Now we're talking.
Take it from these Farragut admirals. When you're craving wings, it's got to be Craven Wings. Visit them online at cravenwings.com.
With all that sun, sand, and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with LASIK vision correction from Campbell Cunningham Laser Center.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Before Cadis, I was really heavy into the drug culture. I was selling drugs. I was just constantly in pain. I was missing like a good support system in my life. Cadis has given me everything that I need in order to successfully have a wonderful recovery, in order to have a life that I didn't even know was possible before. And it's not just about me anymore, and I love that. I absolutely love it.
You can take your life back. Call Cadis today.
Our family has been creating one-of-a-kind pieces of jewelry in West Knoxville since 1986. Each piece is a combination of unique processes that bring your idea to life. Every day in our shop, a truly special item with a story all its own is being manufactured in our facility, bringing the history and family sentiment into a whole new generation of life. We're grateful that you chose us to be Knoxville's best jeweler, a title that we value and respect. Because to me, being a jeweler and owning a jewelry store are not the same thing. I'm Rick Terry. I'm a jeweler, and we want to be your jeweler. Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road in the heart of Farragut, and downtown on Gay Street right next to the Tennessee Theater.
This guy.
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Who?
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Mr. Jones, some thoughts on Georgia. Has to come to Neyland, and our defense has improved. They're going to miss Stetson Bennett, and I believe their quarterback will lose them some games. I wouldn't argue with that, but I'm going to say at this point that Georgia's defense is good enough to overcome that. But beating an SEC East rival on the road, man, that'd be a nice day to have Stetson Bennett, right? I mean, if you're playing on the road, I think your mic's muted. Caleb, if you're playing Stetson Bennett on the road, or if you have Stetson Bennett on the road, that's a great bonus.
Yes, Stetson Bennett would be a much greater help. I am a rookie still forgetting to turn my mic back on. I don't know what's going on with me, but you know.
It's only been 3 years since COVID, but that's okay. Portions of the program brought to you by Zul Beer, xulbeer.com, worldwide award-winning craft beer, and it is phenomenal. You'll love Zul Beer. Great parking downtown as well as Zul Beer, xulbeer.com is phenomenal. It is time for What the H, and we're going to turn it on the one, the only Paul Feinbaum, who was the first ever guest on this program and probably still is like, what in the world is that Dave Hooker guy doing? So here we go. What the H?
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
Paul Feinbaum says, quote, about Tennessee, my opinion is very high. That's just based on talking to people and not seeing very much. I think that's all you can really do. And spring coaches are smart. They know they have more to lose by playing players sometimes and running plays when they do. But I really think this is a much deeper program than it was a year ago. Let me start with that. agree or disagree. Despite losing 2 receivers, a playmaking tight end, a quarterback, what would have been the biggest name on the defense this time of a year ago, is Tennessee deeper than it was this time a year ago?
Yeah, I think there's no question they're deeper. The skill positions may not be as good, but there's no doubt they're deeper.
Okay. Now,
think about it this way, Dave, because you've talked consistently all the time about how the 99 team was better than the 98 team. I think the 99 team was deeper. I think the 98 team, though, there were certain skill spots where the starter that was lost, you just couldn't replace. The question, that's where the 2022 team may be. 2023 is going to be deeper, but the starters that you lost from 2022 may be impossible to replace. The Darnell Wrights, the Hendon Hookers, people like that.
Okay. 4 Downs brought to you by AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Go to AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Best service, best prices in real estate in the Knoxville area. He will take care of you. What the H brought to you today by AndyMasonRealEstate.com. He's my realtor. He should be yours. Now, Feinbaum did refer to Hendon Hooker as being a significant loss. He said, quote, "Now, having said that, you have 2 great wide receivers that are gone. Are the ones that are there now fill the bill? You lost a quarterback that nobody could have predicted and nobody did predict. So that's really what they face." Here's the other thing that I think we gloss over too quickly. And that is that Hendon Hooker was just a great quarterback. He was more than that. He was a great leader. So if you want to go back over the history of great leaders and their individual leadership abilities, I would say Peyton Manning putting together the offseason workouts. I would say T. Martin having the confidence of his players, of his teammates to go out there and play in 98, 99. I would say Casey Clausen on the road, being able to win on the road was a big deal. Quarterbacks have different leadership capabilities, and I thought that Hendon Hooker's was a belief that Tennessee would be better than the outside noise said, and they don't have that this year. I think we gloss over that a little too easily, Caleb. I think that needs to be taken into account. We don't know that Joe Milton or Nico is going to be the guy that's going to step in and rally the troops when they need to be rallied, and that's overlooked too easily, in my opinion.
I agree partially, which is that leadership intangibles with quarterbacks is very underrated. You see it all the time. You see a lot of times you'll see in the NFL, you'll hear, "Oh, this quarterback has so much more help than this quarterback." And a lot of times it's, no, the quarterback's leadership intangibles. These players just want to play harder for that quarterback in that moment. You see that all the time throughout. You've seen it in college. You've covered quarterback controversies where players simply play better when another quarterback's in the game because they trust that guy more. I think that I don't think that's going to be as much of a problem with Joe Milton. Everything I've heard and everything I'm sure you've heard is that the players love Joe Milton.
Yes.
Like, they really like him. And it seems like they're ready to ride or die for Milton. And let's be honest, it had to resonate with a lot of them that when Milton lost his starting job, it's never easy to lose your starting job. Milton lost his starting job and stayed loyal to the program, loyal to Hendon Hooker in last year during the Jeremy Banks and Hooker fight. Who's the one that stepped in on behalf of Hooker? That was Joe Milton that did that. And I think that resonates significantly with a lot of the players on the team, that even if I don't think Joe Milton is going to be Hendon Hooker, he doesn't have Hooker's accuracy. He's got issues throwing it downfield. I don't think he's as good of it. I don't care what he does this year. He's not going to be as good of an NFL draft prospect as Hendon Hooker. But I do think he has Hendon Hooker's leadership qualities. I'm going to give him that much.
And you don't think Joe Milton has any chance of being? I think Joe Milton could be a better draft prospect.
He might be drafted higher, the same way Anthony Richardson is going to be drafted higher. But I have much less faith in Joe Milton in the NFL than I do Hendon Hooker, because there were some severe limitations to Joe Milton's game.
Okay, I agree with that. But as far as the draft prospect, if I'm Joe Milton and I'm watching Anthony Richardson, I'm pretty jazzed that he could get that sort of attention. I mean, could he get drafted higher? Yes. Could he be a more coveted prospect that Hendon Hooker? Yes. Would that be stupid? Yes.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. That's the third part. It's stupid that he would be higher, because I think Hendon Hooker has a much better NFL future than Joe Milton does, honestly. The only thing I will say, and I'm not going to cast aspersions on Anthony Richardson. I don't know. But I will say that I believe half the battle with quarterbacks is intangibles. And even if Joe Milton doesn't have the accuracy, he does have the intangibles. I think he's a really, similar to Hooker, I think he's a really good dude and a mentally tough dude and a hard worker, and he'll do what he has to do to get better.
And then we had somebody ask a question, just curious, how did you all find out Banks was trying to fight Hooker and that Joe stepped in? Well, that was reported by us at the time, but also in addendum to that, it was reported that Jeremy Banks had missed a Monday practice. So, I mean, that was bad as well. So what was he ultimately suspended for? I mean, it could be either, both, all the above, but that was pretty common knowledge. And at that point, Joe Milton stepped in when Jeremy Banks apparently tried to create an issue with Hendon Hooker. And
by the way, we should also point out Josh Heupel was asked about that in the press conference, and Heupel didn't answer one way or the other, meaning it happened.
Yes. Well, and based off who I talked to, I was sure it happened no matter what. But Joe Milton is a different type of leader. Is he more of a raw leader? Does he? I mean, when Alabama misses that kick that would have won the game, and you look to your leader, okay, that leader is now Joe Milton instead of Hendon Hooker, Caleb. And do you have the same inner belief? I don't think you, nor I, nor any player on that team can answer that you have the exact same belief you had last year with Hendon Hooker.
No, because you have to prove that on the field. I mean, I guess leadership in terms of the qualities, you're right. I mean, it's leadership in terms of the qualities, I would have Milton on Hooker's level. That Alabama game last year came about because Hendon Hooker had proven himself in multiple clutch situations already. Just 3 weeks earlier, he had thrown that overtime touchdown pass to Cedric Tillman against Pittsburgh to win that game when there were so many mistakes in the second half of that game. Remember, Tennessee tried their best to give it away, and Hooker runs for a touchdown, holding penalty, called back. Very next play, he throws a touchdown pass. I think Hooker, there was a belief that you knew he could do this. You don't know that Joe Milton can dictate a 15-second drive for a field goal. But I do think he can at least has the respect of his teammates the way Hendon Hooker did. Now, the respect as far as a gamer, we don't know yet. I mean, this is the guy that ran out of bounds with no seconds left on the clock. And that's a big red flag.
Yeah, it's still a red flag to me and still factors into my decision. I know people think that I'm all pro Nico, and maybe I am, but
you're also Joe Milton for Heisman, so we know.
Yeah, I'll just have trouble getting that out of my head, the jumping out of bounds. And then you got a guy standing there like
Ia
Maleava. Somebody got onto me on the message board again. So what do you think about Paul Feinbaum being high on Tennessee? I mean, he is a Tennessee alum. I do think he knows how to press buttons in different fan bases. And just your thoughts on Paul Feinbaum.
I want to hear some of the Alabama callers call into his radio show today after hearing he was high on Tennessee. You got an impression for me, Dave? I love your impressions. I'm an Alabama caller.
If I do an Alabama caller, somebody will get mad. But it just sounds a little like this. I don't know what my impression would be of an Alabama caller.
You know the callers I'm talking about, though.
Yeah, no, I know the ones. I think it's significant. I mean, to be honest, I mean, everybody knows this, that Paul Feinbaum is an alum. He also is an alum of the SEC, and he knows that the SEC is better when Tennessee is better. So it would behoove no one to come out and say, which wouldn't even be true, that Tennessee's not going to be any good and fall off the face of the earth this year.
Yeah, I think Paul Feinbaum, I think his take is right. I think that Paul Feinbaum has largely had a good pulse on Tennessee the past 6-7 years. Paul Feinbaum made the point when the whole Schiano debacle happened. He made the point that I made and that a lot of people were making that they missed, which was the issue was not the whole issue with the Schiano hire was Tennessee waited way too long to fire Butch Jones. And by the time they had fired Butch Jones, the coaches they wanted, i.e. Chip Kelly, Dan Mullen, had already been negotiating with other schools. So everybody at Tennessee was hoping for a John Gruden that wasn't going to come, and John Gruden was never going to come. And I think that's why that whole disaster happened. He's had a pretty good pulse, particularly since he got picked up by ESPN all those years ago. He's gone more he's gone more national. I mean, remember when he was just in Birmingham doing the Alabama show when
it was basically Alabama was good or bad and Auburn was good or bad, and you play both sides against each other.
Exactly. Where people felt safe to call in and admit that they had poisoned the trees at Toomer's Corner.
Well, just total coincidence. 2 weeks ago, I'd explained that to my son because he went to Auburn to see a friend.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost a not believable story when you actually start to go through it. That he called a syndicated show and said, "By the way, poison trees, huh?"
Yeah.
I mean, is that not hard to believe that still happened?
It is insanely. I mean, it's incredible to believe that I agree. I can't believe that it happened either. Like that was, and he was all because he was mad because someone put a Cam Newton jersey on the Bear Bryant statue after Auburn beat Alabama. Like,
well, the reason is because he's a village idiot.
Yes.
I mean, let's not make excuses for him. The guy is an idiot.
That same year, I don't know if you remember this. Remember when Alabama and LSU played for the national title game? It was a bad year for Alabama fans. But that exact same year, about 10 months later, there was an LSU fan drunk and passed out before the game.
Stop right there. There's an LSU fan drunk and passed out?
In New Orleans, no less.
In New Orleans? What the H?
Well, an Alabama fan thought it would be a good idea, I kid you not, to go on camera, pull his pants down, and put his stuff on top of the LSU fan's face. Which, by the way,
I remember that. Not that I need to remember that.
That is sexual assault, straight up. By any reasonable definition.
Yeah, that's highly frowned upon and illegal. Mr. Jones saying year 3 in Heupel's system, I believe we will see the best version of Joe Milton. Hendon taught him some things. So you asked this question in our production meeting this morning. Is it fair for Tennessee fans, based off what they've seen in spring, to go into the fall expecting or hoping to win an SEC East crown? Which now we have Paul Feinbaum being high on Tennessee. So is it hoping or expecting? What's fair?
I think hoping is fair, and I think seeing it as a real possibility is fair. And the reason I think it's fair is not so much what Tennessee did in the spring, although there is the fact that Joe Milton never lost his starting job. And as you've talked to people, we both heard that Joe Milton did not do anything to lose the job in the spring. That was his job, and he didn't lose it. But the other part of it is the quarterback situations across the rest of the East. Look, we just talked about it. Florida's got the worst quarterback situation. It's the best known secret in college football right now. Florida is desperately looking for a quarterback in the transfer portal right now as we speak. Billy Napier is making call after call trying to find somebody to come to Florida. Their situation is terrible. Georgia, I know that Carson Beck was given an A, but I've heard, and you've heard the same rumors, that Georgia's looking in the portal too right now because they're not so sure.
Yes, and I think everybody would be wise to look in the portal. If Tennessee found a guy that they thought was better than Navy Schuler or Gaston Moore, and he said, I'm willing to ride the pine, and I'm your emergency third-string quarterback like the NFL has, and I have the skills, then I would take that guy. But I'm past the point where I thought you would take the guy out of Wake, that you needed somebody to compete with Joe Milton. I don't think you need that. I changed my tune a little bit before spring camp, but would you take a third string quarterback that could salvage the season if something went south? Yeah, I'd probably take that guy. I mean, who wouldn't take a quarterback right now?
Exactly.
Just has to be the right fit. Sorry, go ahead.
I agree. But from what we've both heard, and tell me if you've heard the same thing, that's not how Georgia's looking in the portal right now, is it? They're actually looking for a guy that they think could compete for the starting job, from what I've heard.
I hear that really strong in Alabama, not as strong in Georgia right now, but I'm not arguing the point. I think you're right, but I hear it in Alabama a lot.
Okay, yeah, and that's the other point. Alabama is the third one. And Alabama, look, I've been very clear. Alabama's taken a step back this year for as good as their recruiting class is. Bryce Young is the only reason they won more than 8 games last year, and he's gone. They don't have a quarterback that can replace Bryce Young. They're having trouble at the quarterback spot. I think they'll be okay long term, going back to the old school ways of Tommy Rees, and I guess Nick Saban hates when you say this, but ball control, offense, and things like that. But I do think that this year is going to be a problem. So Tennessee is going to get a rebuilding Alabama. And yeah, I said rebuilding Alabama. They're going to get Georgia at home, and Georgia's not so sure about their quarterback situation. And they're getting Florida on the road, yes, but Florida's quarterback situation is a complete disaster. So I don't think it's and their other West opponent is Texas A&M. You and I both agree Texas A&M is. I mean, you want to talk about the bottom falling out of a program. This is going to be 2000 Alabama with Mike DeVos, that Texas A&M year.
I'm going to ask you this question coming up: Is Alabama down, rebuilding, or fading? Because those are three very different things. Hit that thumbs up button. We'll tackle that issue, what the Crimson Tide can expect with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. 2 minutes off TheHookSports.com.
To own the more that owns every job, then get to Vassey Lawn and Garden in Cleveland and get you a Toro. I'm David Vassey, here to talk to you about Toro. With a Toro Zero Turn, you'll get more out of every minute and you'll reach the finish line faster. At Vassey's, we like to say, no matter if you're mowing 3 acres a week or 11 lawns a day, homeowners and business owners alike find confidence in equipment they can trust from top to bottom.
Vassey Lawn and Garden, Highway 60 North in Cleveland.
Man alive, it's worth the drive.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Our family has been creating one-of-a-kind pieces of jewelry in West Knoxville since 1986. Each piece is a combination of unique processes that bring your idea to life. Every day in our shop, a truly special item with a story all its own is being manufactured in our facility, bringing the history and family sentiment into a whole new generation of life. We're grateful that you chose us to be Knoxville's best jeweler, a title that we value and respect. Because to me, being a jeweler and owning a jewelry store are not the same thing. I'm Rick Terry. I'm a jeweler, and we want to be your jeweler. Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road in the heart of Farragut, and downtown on Gay Street right next to the Tennessee Theater.
With all that sun, sand, and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with LASIK vision correction from Campbell Cunningham Laser Center.
What's up, everybody? This is University of Tennessee tight end Jacob Warren, proud to announce that I'll be working with Craven Wings again this season. And I want you to give your all and try my signature sauce, Sauce 87, at either of the Craven Wings 2 locations, Chapman Highway in Seymour and South North Shore Drive at the Markets of Choto. When you're craving wings, it's gotta be Craven Wings. Online at cravenwings.com.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on OffTheHookSports.com.
Confidence, borderlining on cocky on the message board. I love it. Mr. Jones saying Heupel the Saban Slayer. Maybe. Vols are lighting cigars in Birmingham. Here we go, message board. Ready to fire it up. I think they're going to play in Tuscaloosa, but nevertheless, Caleb, I don't think they're playing in Birmingham.
Yeah, that's old school. I don't think they played in Birmingham since 1997.
Yeah, was it 97?
97. Yeah, because it was notable because the Fred White trash talking Sean Alexander game was the first time Alabama played Tennessee in Tuscaloosa in like 60 years at the time. It's
nice. Travis saying we will hammer them if Milroe is their quarterback. So I ask you this question based off what we've heard post spring practice, and it's brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com. Integrity matters, over 50 years in the HVAC service in Knoxville. Is Alabama fading or rebuilding? Because you've used the term rebuilding here a couple of times. looking for a quarterback. Probably should have lost 2 more games last year. So are they fading or rebuilding?
They're rebuilding. They just had the number 1 recruiting class in the country, and they're going to have it again. Nick Saban has been on, Jaru has been talking about this. Nick Saban's been on a tear, an angry tear on the trail ever since what happened at the end of last year. And I think that those recruits will come to fruition. It's just, look, you never pick a team based on the recruiting class of that year. Like, you never pick, I'm not going to base Alabama's success in 2023 based on their 2023 recruiting class. And so I think they're rebuilding. I think sometimes we kind of forget this. And I want to just point this out. Yes, Alabama's won, 6 national titles under Nick Saban. I think we've forgotten, because of the fact that they've won 6, how hard it is to win a national title and how lucky you have to be a lot of times. And I think that, yes, Alabama was good enough to win those titles. They were a dynasty. They were the best team in football most of those years, but they still had to have some luck. Let's think about the 2011 team, the one that lost to LSU and got the rematch in the national title game. That only happens because Oklahoma State blows a 24-7 lead on a Friday night to some unranked Iowa State team. If that doesn't happen, it's Oklahoma State and LSU beats the brakes off Oklahoma State. And Les Miles is the worst 2-time national champion in the history of any sport. And so,
okay, I want to see your face when I say this. Alabama's fading. They're fading under Nick Saban. They are. He can continue to work hard on the recruiting trail, but there's uncertainty about what to do on both offense and defense. He had a bad round of coordinator hires before this latest one. They're having quarterback issues. Their skill position players, other than Jahmyr Gibbs, weren't special. And, well, Bryce Young, if you want to consider him a quarterback, skill position players. But other than those 2 guys, they were pretty average. I think defensively, for whatever reason, I thought Will Anderson took a slight step back. The secondary was good, not great. I think they've taken a step back, Caleb. I really believe that, and I think it's a fading. I think that's what's going to happen. At some point, this will happen, and I think you would agree. You would say Nick Saban is fading as the dominant head coach in college football. The question is that now in 2023? Was it last year in 2022, or is it moving forward 2024, 2025, and into the future? At some point, that's going to be the answer to the question, and I think to a large extent it was last year.
Is he fading or are other coaches emerging? Look, we've talked about this. Kirby Smart at Georgia, and Georgia finally deciding we're not going to be the integrity school. We're just going to go all out and win like the rest of the schools do. I'm not blaming Georgia. For Georgia fans, I'm not blaming you guys. Every other school was doing it. You guys just finally decided to do it too. And then Brian Kelly at LSU, again, an LSU coach with some brain cells for the first time since Nick Saban. I think that it becomes a lot harder for Nick Saban because there's much more competition in terms of a match of wits than there used to be. But just to push back, Dave, I mean, look, Alabama got 2 5-star edge rushers this past year in Yonze Pierre and Keon Keeley, and their recruiting class was just loaded with talent. I mean, we say we don't know who their skill weapons are. And we don't know who their star defenders are. They will be there in 2 years. This class was loaded up on defense and offensive linemen.
Yeah, but will Nick Saban be there in 2 years?
I think Nick Saban is going to be coaching until he croaks.
That could be, but I do think they're fading. And you brought up a good reason as to why I believe that. You have Georgia that is now a dominant program. You're going to have Brian Kelly at LSU do well with the Tigers. I think Steve Sarkisian will do well at Texas, and now they're going to be in the SEC. So maybe it's not through Nick Saban's fault, but I do believe he's fading. Part of it, though, is I believe it's his fault. I don't believe he's a good fit for the modern-day college football. I think he was uncertain about tempo on offense. It took him a while to adjust to that. I'm nitpicking an incredible Hall of Fame career, by the way, okay? So don't think I'm ripping on Nick Saban. I'm not. But and he's now had to overcome the transfer portal and NIL, which I guess to a large extent they've done based off their recruiting, but I don't think it's something that he's particularly comfortable with, Caleb.
It's not, but it's probably something Nick Saban's more comfortable with than most. I'm going to be honest. Let's talk about Nick Saban for a minute, because we sometimes compare him to a coach that was never there in terms of previous Nick Saban, which is even in his prime, even like when Nick Saban had Alabama winning 3 national championships in 4 years, there was never a time period, was there, where you thought if you had one game for your life and you needed a coach to game plan for that game, Nick Saban was never at the top of that list.
He was for me after Lane Kiffin. When he embraced tempo, I thought before that he would get 12, 13, 14-point lead and sit on it in the second half. And I thought an in-game coach, I thought there were better in-game coaches. But after he embraced the tempo aspect of it and trying to score a lot of points, at that point I would have taken him over anybody.
Yeah, but even when he had Lane Kiffin, 2 years in a row, Hugh Freeze coached circles around him game planning on Saturday.
I agree. That to me is the aberration.
The thing is, Nick Saban's the ultimate Jimmies and Joes over X's and O's, and he's always picked the right schools where he could get the Jimmies and Joes. LSU, Alabama.
Rebecca saying, I think they're fading too. Saban is losing his spark while Heupel is lighting it up. Alabama is getting lost in the success of others. Well said, Rebecca. And then, so the NFL draft coming up, Darnell Wright handled Will Anderson and did a fantastic job. What player other than Wright from Tennessee's roster has the best NFL future?
Of all the players outside of Darnell Wright, the obvious one would seem to be Hendon Hooker. But I don't think Hendon Hooker is as sure of a bet, and I don't think you think he's as sure of a bet either. It depends on where he goes and a bunch of other factors.
Sure.
So I'm going to say Byron Young.
It's not fair that you take mine.
There's another one. You want to? I don't know. I don't know if I'll give you a chance to go there, but
let me go out on a limb on one that you might find a little crazy, and Byron Young would be my number 2, even above Hendon Hooker. He would be my number 2 to Darnell Wright. But I feel like one of the 2 receivers will have a long 8-9 year NFL career. And I think it's Cedric Tillman.
I'm with you. I was going to go there too. I think it's Cedric Tillman too. I almost was going to say Cedric Tillman, and then I went to Byron Young. And so I'm sorry, I audibled and stole yours.
No, when you look at Cedric, I mean, especially in person, don't you kind of think that, listen, everybody has to work hard in the NFL. Don't take this the wrong way. But don't you kind of think he could just kind of slide into an NFL spot and keep it for 7-8 years?
Yeah. Fundamentally, he's everything you want in a receiver. I mean, everything. And there were questions about his speed, but he put those to rest. He's got the speed that he needs to have for the type of role he's going to play, and he showed that at the combine. I think it's hard to this day for so many people to accept this about Cedric Tillman because he was a 2-star coming out. And it does. I still can't wrap my head around how he was only a 2-star coming out of Nevada. And maybe it's because that people just don't have faith in Nevada kids. There's not a lot of good high school football out there. But yeah, it came out and if you look at the build and the talent, Cedric Tillman's easily the best prospect of the 2.
And the guy that does get left out of this conversation often when we discuss it is Jalen Hyatt. Why? Are we being unfair to Jalen Hyatt?
I think Jalen Hyatt's entire NFL career depends on his speed. He has no proven route running ability, no proven ability to win 50-50 balls. Now, one great point that someone brought up, and it was about the 40 time, and it's that if you ever noticed Jalen Hyatt last year, he kind of got separation after he was 30 to 40 yards downfield, and it seems like he's probably the type of guy that runs a really good 100-meter dash and not as good of a 40-yard dash.
Yeah, I think he's a top ender. I think he runs straight up. I think he's a top ender. I think if you took the last 10 yards of the 40s, I'd say he would be towards the top. But still, in today's NFL, you've got to get open and short little routes. So I don't know that completely means that he's going to be a standout. I think, I'll be honest with you, I don't think Jalen Hyatt is even in the top 3 or 4 of former Vols that are going to have a standout career in the NFL. I wouldn't be surprised, it's kind of like a Jabari Greer, to go back if Trey Flowers found a role somewhere in the NFL to kind of hang on for a while. He's not as capable as Jabari, but I know Jabari had to go to the NFL and get kind of recoached. Could that happen with Flowers? Yeah. I mean, how many coaches did he play under at Tennessee?
Yeah, I'm with you. He quite a few, and he's a very, very, very underrated prospect. Again, he's a guy who sacrificed his NFL future covering for a lot of mistakes in the secondary. I used to say that was the same with Jonathan Hefney in 2007, but the difference is Hefney's not – Trey Flowers is bigger than Hefney was, and because Jonathan Hefney was real small.
Yeah, Hefney's a good comparison, though. Probably a little bit more ball hockey, but Hefney is a very good comparison. So tomorrow on the program, it'll be Jimmy Himes with the Sports Animal. He will join us. We always love visiting with him. Brought to you by Bassey Lawn and Garden, Man Alive. It's worth the drive. And also, we'll visit with Josh Ward and Fred White before the end of the week. We're with you weekdays live. And don't forget, we have apps. That's all good stuff. It's right down in the link below for the show. And we also podcast wherever you podcast. We're live on YouTube and beyond each and every weekday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Have a fantastic day, everyone. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker.